Hi, everyone. It's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group. I'm here today with Scott Williams, who's a senior product manager at SPS Commerce. Scott, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Of course, I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we're pleased to have you here. We've got a series of questions for you that I think will be very important to distributors as they think about how they can better manage product data. And so, first of all, I'll just throw it out there. Why is accurate product data so critical for distributors today?
Yeah, so even taking a step back, I think something that's helped me really think about the criticality of item data is like defining an item, right? And so I think you just call it product data, item data. Those two are kind of synonymous. But especially when we're talking to our distributor customers, it's like what is an item? And really, kind of we defined it as a sellable unit, right? Everything from transistor to a however many gauge wire, anything that you can kind of sell to the end consumer. And so when we think about why you need accurate product data and how important it is, that every piece of the business is dependent on it. When we think about, hey, how as a category manager, for example, at a distributor, am I going to understand what item I'm purchasing? What's the price? How do I do my margin calculations? How do I get it to my end consumer? And as we all know, right, um, you can get there a number of ways. Do you import it? Do you buy it domestically? Do you ship it to your distribution center? Do you ship it direct to a branch or a business or a consumer's house? Depending on the item, is it even eligible for that? Or so all of the kind of those different pieces, in terms of getting it to where it needs to go, doing it efficiently, I think is a huge piece. I've toured a couple customers, distribution centers and warehouses and kind of storing locations for all these items. And, they have a receiving dock for the items with accurate product data. And they have a, reject pile almost with, oh, as I scan these, I don't see anything coming up. That reject pile just keeps getting bigger, 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 right? Because they need to maybe measure the item, weigh the item, put it in a bin, and they don't have any automated processes behind it. So it's like enables operational efficiency, enables the category managers, the buyers, the merchants, whoever is at that distributor purchasing the good. And then ultimately, I think what we're all striving for is accurate product data improves consumer experience, right? Whether that consumer is you and me working on a home project or a job site trying to order some bespoke item potentially. So we define consumer as anyone using then that
Sure.
good.
Mhm. Yeah, and it has been a problem for distributors, since before e-commerce. I mean, I used to run the Granger catalog,
Yeah,
and even in print, getting that product data right was a real struggle. Now that you have this proliferation of products and ways that you deliver product information to customers, and it's like, well, you got to keep it consistent across channels, but you have to have it to begin with, right? And
right.
so my understanding is a lot of what SPS Commerce does is it simplifies product attribute sharing between distributors, manufacturers, and customers. And how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it right. Just in terms of, Granger, MSC, Fastenal, even Zorro.com, right? Maybe Zorro's a little bit of a unique case just because it's, online drop ship, natively.
Sure.
But, as you think about, you know, I'm a I'm an electrical supplier, right? I've got wires, switches, junction boxes or something like that, maybe in for as example. I'm probably doing business with multiple different distributors. They might have multiple different channels, or maybe they just have one, right? But regardless, it's as I just said, with how important item data is, and as you said, it's like, how do you take that? How do you make sure as a supplier or a vendor that that product data is tailored to each one of those channels or buyers of your product, and that it's accurate, right? And that could take a ton of time because knowing all of the different variations of these goods, right? All of the different permutations of them, length, width, height, gauges, whatever you say, that starts to get to a lot of items depending on kind of what your catalog is. And so really kind of what we do is we enable these distributors, manufacturers to really share data in near real time. Always careful there. It's near real time because there might be some delay, right? But the real important thing is ensuring the data consistency across all channels. We help validate that data to a certain extent before it goes to these distributors. But then we also kind of put it where it needs to go, right? So Granger, as an example, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but it's, you know, this distributor might have an ERP where they need item setup information. They might have a PIM that contains all types of item information from that price and, you know, ID for setup all the way through maybe an image and marketing descriptions and stuff like that. They might have a WMS, right, where you need dimensions and weights. So that is also kind of equally time consuming from a both supplier as well as distributor perspective to make sure all of that data is in all of the right spots and is accurate.
Yeah. And so what does SPS provide that makes that easier?
Yeah, good question. So we provide our suite of kind of cloud-based services for that, right? So we have a couple different products on the supplier side, you know, that's our item data product that essentially we consult with these suppliers on who all of their organizations are that need to receive this data. We build them almost a standard, right, for them to say, oh, okay, even if Fastenal, Granger, MSC, and Zoro.com are all asking for ID or color. Maybe color is a good example. They might all call that something different, right? Whether it's
Sure.
GS1 color code, a proprietary color, something like that. To me as a supplier, I have one color for my product and that's black, right? And so how do I map to a standard and then put all of the hard work of creating those mappings and those connections to the distributors on SPS Commerce? So that's kind of one of the means. But then also on the flip side, right? If you're a distributor, how do you get all of that data into your system? And that's another service offering that we've got specifically targeted at those buying and potentially selling organizations to receive all of that data from their supplier community and put it wherever it needs to go.
That's great. So, Scott, I've been hearing about something called the Freedom Data Initiative. Can you elaborate on what that is and what impact it's having on reducing data silos and distribution?
Yeah, so I think really at the end of the day, you know, a couple of the themes that we've talked about so far are collecting the right data at the right time, getting it into the right systems across all of your network. But you know, as you start to think about all of these distributors, they're pretty big organizations, right? They have a lot of different silos from category management to supply chain to e-com, for example. How do you get that same data into all of those different teams as um, silos, if you will, for them to access, manage, and share that product information a little bit more efficiently? And really, this initiative fosters kind of standard data standardization as well, because you know, due to the rapid proliferation of channels of customers of everything else, that just makes that uh, standard data, if you will, less and less standard. And so it's how do you how do you lean on some of the standardization? How do you um, then get it into all of those different silos at a distributor?
Got it. Okay. So the Freedom Data Initiative helps standardize the how you syndicate the data or how you share the data between these different channels or silos.
Spot on. Yep.
Okay. And what are some common data related challenges distributors face, and how can they overcome them with SPS solutions?
Yeah. So product data is hard. Product data can be inconsistent. Um, we know that finding the right product to get to the right spot at the right time is also very difficult. And so as we start to think about, you know, what are some of the actual challenges day in and day out distributors might face, it's data inconsistencies, right? It's how do you make sure the data that you receive is complete, it is matched up to the right product, and how do you make sure that it gets to the right spot at the right time? And oftentimes, I think what we see is, even though this is a challenge, a lot of our customers do solve this by putting big teams in place, right? You'll start to see these item data teams at these distributors. You'll start to see them kind of working with these suppliers day in and day out on gathering this item data for setup, for enrichment, for kind of maintaining their items as their price changes. And so, even though it is a challenge, right, it might be more of a latent challenge that people will start to work on instead of looking at technology that might help them. And um, not that it will ever replace those teams, right? But it's to augment those teams and make things easier, smoother, based on standards, and putting that data kind of in the right place, so then folks can focus on really what they need to, right? Which is getting the product to their end consumer. I think also, secondly, right? So data inconsistencies is one of them. I talked about it a little bit just in terms of putting people, these item data teams on it. And so obviously one of, I think, the second challenges is just manual data entry. Now you can say, people have to go gather the data, then type it into systems. But I also, when I go and talk to our customers, it's like, well, we have this legacy system that, you have to enter this data into, and then some script gets kicked off to put it into another system or something like that, if they're lucky. Um, there are some customers that I've talked to where somebody has to literally enter data into about 4 different systems to make sure that that item can make its way through the supply chain when a category manager wants to add it to their assortment. And so that's another big one. And then third is just kind of that lack of visibility, synchronizing the data across channels, tracking the suppliers who are good at this or not good at this, or consistently inconsistent, if that makes sense. But then also getting that data across all of these channels. So I think there's 3 big ones. Yeah.
So, Scott, let's talk about some practical tools and insights. What tools does SPS Commerce offer for solving old problems in product data management in new ways?
Uh, Absolutely. So I think we do it a couple of different ways, right? One, from a supplier lens, a vendor lens, somebody who's selling the good to a distributor, and that's really kind of what we call our assortment solution, also known as item data solution, which is really kind of our cloud-based solution that automates this data collection from the suppliers. It validates it, and then it sends it to all of their customers and all of their different channels, right? And I think that's super important because we do a couple of different things baked into that. One, it's standardizing what the supplier needs to send, the information, the types of information that they need to send across all of their channels. But then secondly, it's validating against those channels' requirements, syntactically making sure everything checks out, validating the content a little bit of the data, but then also I think distributing it, right? If I'm a supplier with, let's say, 5 different channels, I'm going to have to figure out, oh, channel 1 likes their item data in a standard formatted Excel sheet, because they take that and they type it into their systems. Channel 2 and 3 might like it via an API or a portal, and channels 4 and 5 might like it as a XML feed, right? That seems pretty daunting to me as a supplier. And so really kind of that's one of our offerings, is to really help them manage their item data, but also that syndication and that distribution of it across all of their different channels. But on the flip side, right, if I'm a distributor, much like a supplier might have 5 channels, a distributor might have thousands of suppliers that they do business with, right? Maybe some suppliers have 10 items, 5 items that they sell to this distributor. Other suppliers might have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, based on all of the different variants. And so then it's, how do I, as a distributor, get all of that item information from item setup to item enrichment, think images and marketing content, to just maintaining an item. If the price changes, for example, if the packaging changes, and all of this comes down to each kind of distributor's view of how they look at an item as well. And so it's, how do I communicate that broadly to all of my thousands or tens of thousands of suppliers? Then how do I get all of their item information into my systems? first, maybe there's a big change event of I don't have a system today, so how do I get it all? To just maybe onesie twosies as I do business with a new supplier. How do I get that into my systems as well? So there are kind of two different sides of the same coin there. Is how do you help the suppliers? How do you help the distributors? But at the end of the day, we exist to simplify this item information exchange across this supply chain ecosystem. And so really that's kind of our methodology and how we built our products and services.
Those tools sound amazing. I mean, wish we'd had them available when I was working for distributors, putting together catalogs and websites. I mean, these tools just make it a lot easier to win.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the goal, right? As a category manager, I don't necessarily be wanting to spend my time looking through spreadsheets of supplier data to make sure that, oh, this piece of data is wrong, so I can't upload it, on my ecom website, or I can't actually get this through my distribution center efficiently, right? I want to be spending my time on choosing the right item for what my customers expect, and then doing it at the right margin and getting it to them on time. And the item data piece of it is obviously necessary, right? So pieces of information, but it's like I want to spend my time where I think I have the most amount of value versus, you know, doing the spreadsheet Olympics 3 times a week or something like that to just get things through.
Yeah, and actually, you're leading nicely up to my last question, which is how does improved data accuracy and sharing directly benefit a distributor's profitability and efficiency?
Um, how doesn't it? I guess I would flip it back on you, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, I think there are four kind of key areas that are really mapped to an item's life cycle. One, it's how do I discover the right item to carry for my collection, right? Whether and that's broadly defined. If it's, ecom, there's probably a more curated experience versus somebody ordering in from a job site. But at the end of the day, I've got to figure out the details about that item to make sure that I want to make a purchase. I have to know details about that item to set it up in my systems, to enrich it to the point of sellability. And then finally, it's the whole maintenance piece of it. And so one is literally just onboarding the items faster into my systems will help me be a little bit more profitable and efficient, right? I'll be spending less time on manually entering in item details. I'll be able to bring a product to market a little bit faster if I can get those item details where they need to be when they need to be there. So then that prepares the entire supply chain for these item when I cut an order for it. Secondly, then, after I onboard the item, I should probably cut an order for it or receive an order from it. And so if I have the right item details, the right price, the right details to cut that order, I'll spend less time kind of in back and forth with that supplier on, oh, my buyer part number is 1, 2, 3, 4, but your GTIN is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that the same item? Is that not? Right. And
Right.
so it just helps create that connection to get those orders through quicker, to get that item into the supply chain quicker and to your customer quicker as well. But I think, order can be for a job site, for a replenishment in a distribution center, but it's also you and me ordering online, right? And if you have the wrong product details online, for a drop ship relationship, then ultimately I'm going to be a dissatisfied customer, and I might have to return it. Then that is another business process I, as a distributor, need to figure out how to get items back into my distribution centers. I think then the third component is really just improving a supplier relationship, right? If we're operating on the same information, that is going to make things so much smoother. And between the two of us, we can collaborate. You can tell me your new products, your existing products, what you might be taking out of your collection. But then also, this will allow both of us to get these products to these customers quicker, right? And ultimately, I think that is a great measure of profitability and efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I love it's a very holistic explanation, right? Because it's like, and as you mentioned earlier, I mean, first of all, if you have these efficient tools, you've got more time to work on things that more directly generate revenue. If I'm a category
Mm-hmm.
manager, right? dealing
Mm-hmm.
with quotes and customers and working with sales reps. I don't have to spend my
Totally.
time, in spreadsheet hell, like you talked about. Then, it's going to sell better because people understand the product and they're more confident they're buying the right thing because the product data is complete. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
less likely to return it because they're more likely to have bought the right thing. So, I mean, it's just a whole bunch um, of activities and benefits that improve sales and lower costs and then provide more productivity for your people.
100%. I think, and by looking at it like that, right, it's really easy to both come to a really concrete, recommendation of all of the different item data that you need, but there's also the possibility where it just explodes everything you need, right? Because you as a category manager, you're like, oh man, this is going to be a silver bullet to all my problems. And it's like, no, you still have to be super focused on what you're asking these suppliers for
Sure.
so that they can make sure that that is a reasonable ask for them. We've had a couple customers come in and see all of the different data elements that we collect. And, their scope starts out at, 500 different data elements. And we're like, all right, you got to reel that back to,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
a factor of 10x.
sure.
Um, but how can you make those then data elements work for you as your business as well?
Well, Scott, it's been a fascinating discussion. Thanks so much for joining me today and explaining the tools and methodologies that SPS uses to improve product data management between manufacturers, distributors, and their customers.
You bet. Thanks for having me.